Welcome. For the last few years, the Indian IT industry has been focused on a lot of technology issues for like artificial intelligence, digital, robotics, robotic process automation, and it gets more specific than that. But the big question, in some ways, the answer that we're coming back to is the basics. The basics is all about training, it's about staying focused with customers, and it sounds very simple, but it perhaps isn't. Let's find out more. My guest is Rishad Premji, Chairman of Nasscom this year, and also Wipro. Rishad, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. So, a very broad question first. I think there's the Nasscom, and you are taking some pains to separate the reality from the opportunity, and that in turn is built on a lot of premises that were existing about where technology is going, where Indian IT industry is going, and what we are really working on. Walk us through that.
No, so I think you're referring to what the theme of the conference also is, which is the next opportunity versus reality. And I think the very fundamental objective there was just to take stock of where we are in terms of the progress we've made versus the opportunity that presents itself. And I think the good news is that more and more large customers are going from how they've experimented and piloted with digital capabilities and that digital journey in the way they serve their customers to going more and more into sort of production or industrialized environments. And that just bodes well for the industry as we move forward into 1920 and beyond, that opportunity is likely to become more and more real. So the objective of the approach was just to take stock of, is it all phantom or is it going to convert into real stuff?
Right, and there is a renewed focus on skills. Now, is that because industry has not been investing enough, or is there the need that it has to invest even further and faster to stay abreast?
Look, I would say there's a huge shortage of talent in these new age skills globally. And so this is not an India versus another country phenomenon. This is a phenomenon on talent and availability of talent to participate in the opportunities that we just talked about, right? And so as a consequence of that, I think a major focus, and if you ask me, one of the major drives that the industry is taking is future skilling. And so, which is the platform that we've launched as Nasscom last year, which the objective of which is how do we reskill 2 million of the 4 million people that are directly employed by the industry in phase 1, and then in phase 2 another 2 million people, which can be both people in the industry and outside of the industry. It could be people in other professions, young students, students graduating, etc., etc. And we're at that stage of still rollout in many ways. We've got 10 companies to sign up for it. We as Wipro are one of the companies. We've got 200,000 people who are on the platform now. And the focus for this year, 1920, next year, will be on adoption. How do we get more activity and usability on the platform? And I think, and it can go from there. But I think the concept of focusing on reskilling of people is a very, very sound one and a very critical one, in fact, to participate in the opportunity.
Right. Can you illustrate this to through an example of, let's say, a company that's maybe in insurance or banking or retail, the needs that they have, the place that they want to go to, and how this skilling back home in an office in Bangalore is actually helping them achieve their objectives?
No, so you can just take an example of a company that's looking to leverage driver pattern data that they may connect through a connected car platform, right? They can see how you and I drive as people and capture that data and then try and bake that data back into the insurance of how do you want to charge. Now, just the ability to do that and the skills that you may need. So you may need strong data science capabilities. You may need strong machine learning and AI capabilities. You may need algorithmic capabilities. And just having those skills of people available is where there's a shortage in the world today. And so how do we help build those different capabilities is a big focus. As a part of that Future Skills platform, we're focusing on 10 different technologies, on 55 different job roles, and 155 different skills. So it's very, very broad, right? But it's those kinds of skills, and I just gave you an example. One of those 10 technologies is AI/ML.
Right.
So.
Right. And how do companies, join these platforms, and is the return going to be sooner than later? I mean, is there going to be a lag in the time that you take to actually catch up with what your clients want?
No, so I think the way to think about this platform is how do it becomes an enabler for me as a company. So why does Wipro sign up for the Future Skills platform? It signs up for the Future Skills platform because the platform can help train its employees to elevate themselves in these new age skills, right? And that's the fun. So, and that's the reason why we're doing it. So at the end of the day, we can have more skilled people in certain technologies and areas that we see a huge demand for. So it's a huge interest of companies to leverage this to be able to be more prepared to participate and compete in the marketplace. It's as simple as that in my mind.
Right. So I remember interviewing one of your CEOs a few years ago who said that there was one of the things that he expected was that middle management would face a huge threat in coming years, and that those years have now arrived. How is that shaping up? And all of this is causing, I'm sure, some amount of churn within organizations, churn and challenges within organizations. What are the take?
No, look, I think in any change in life, and this is no different for this as well, I would submit, that you'll have 20% of your people who are the change agents, right? They're the digitally native people in this case who are leading the way. You will have 10% of the people who think that this is all bogus and this will pass. And unfortunately, they will not make the cut because they are not subscribing to the change and they're fighting it, right? And then you'll have 70% of the people in the middle who understand it, who want to be part of it, who need to be supported to be part of it, who need to be helped, who need to be retrained, who need to be reskilled. And that is our duty as an industry, as companies, to help those people do that. And it's in our interest to help those people do that, to be able to participate in the demand that exists. So that's the big focus. How do you help those people move along to be relevant in the future? The middle management, or the middle, sort of the core of the organization that you were talking about.
Right. So, there's no H1B question now, at least in the manner that it was asked a couple of years ago, and literally a couple of years ago. And that's one reason is because companies like you and many organizations have invested heavily onshore. So where is that broadly from your ringside view, and what more needs to be done?
In terms of
how much more onshore, onshore investment? Are you at a...
Look, I think all of us as companies are very strongly focused on how do we localize, right? The challenge is availability of skills. As I was talking about earlier, it's a global challenge in terms of availability of skills. One of the big things many of us as companies are driving is how do we hire people from campus now and build a cadre and build a pyramid out in markets themselves. And the US being our largest market is a big focus for many of us as companies. So that also by design helps you localize. It by design helps you de-risk from things like visas, which can create more stress in the mobility of people. And that's a very, very strong journey that companies are on. We personally as a company have been on that journey for the last 3 years, and we've gone from sub 50% of our people being locals to over 63% of our people being local in the US. So it's a very, very substantive change that we've been through, and we think it makes a lot of business sense as well.
Right. And to that extent, would you say that you're now far more comfortable in this post-Trump world?
Yeah, I think, look, it's very important for us as an industry to also advocate on a couple of things. I think it's very important for us to advocate on the perception that people perhaps carry about Indian IT, right? And that's important to change, because the concept that we are a low-cost, high-quality provider is a story of table stakes. That's been a story that a lot of global companies have mastered. We exist and we survive and we thrive with customers because we add significantly more value than that. So that's one important thing we've got to continuously focus on, in how do we change the perspective and the perception through a very fact-based approach. That's one element. Two, I think it's also important for us to advocate that we have a level playing field, that we are treated as fairly as any other company applying for a visa. So you can't have a different standard for a certain set of companies and another standard for another set of companies. And I think the good news is more and more the conversation is moving to visas as opposed to what it was historically, for example, where it was about 50-50 companies, right? Which was companies that had less than 50% of their employees who were local. So I think it's really important that we stay the course, that we be visible, that we be vocal, and we work directly as Nasscom, but also work in partnership with the government to take this up on the other side. And I think we're doing that.
Right. And can I ask you now, if you were to look back at the last year or maybe a little more, what would be the 2 or 3 significant standout innovations or achievements in the industry, which sort of points us to the direction in terms of how we would hold stronger and be stronger in the technology space?
No, I think that all of us are building out quite competitively our ability to participate in this highly overused word, but I'll use it anyways, digital transformation that our customers are going through, right? The right to play there is becoming much stronger. And the interesting thing about that play is it starts all the way from thinking to designing to building and to running, right? And I think more and more customers want that end-to-end offering, and Indian technology companies are participating more and more upstream to play where their strength is, which is downstream. So I think that's one thing that's happening. I think large deals are back in the
Billion-dollar deals
marketplace,
and,
right, which you have perhaps not seen in the middle for a while. And the interesting thing about those large deals is they're not necessarily coming from very, very large companies. So you don't have to be working with a $50 billion company to win a $1 billion deal. You can be working with a $3, $4, $5 billion company to win a $1 billion deal. And many of them are also private equity owned, which have a very different speed and sense of purpose with which they're driving to make disruptive change. So I think those are two interesting observations of what's happening.
Right. And in your own conversation with clients, and you did talk about customer centricity in as we began this conversation, what are clients telling you? What is topmost on their minds that they want you to focus on and obviously fix in the coming year or so?
No, I think two things. One is I think they want to be able to serve their customers much, much more intimately, right? Two, they want to understand their customers much more intimately to be able to cross-sell and upsell to them. So how do you drive all your processes in a very human-centric manner with the customer at the center of it all? And how do you leverage data to be able to understand your customers and be able to do more business with them? And I'm talking from a growth perspective. There's obviously a whole component on the cost side as well, which is well understood. I'm just giving you an example of something on the growth side.
Right. And finally, there is a data explosion. We've generated a hell of a lot of data in recent years. What are the concerns and the opportunities when it comes to either mining that data or using it efficiently and making sure it doesn't go into the wrong hands?
No, look, I think we've got to be sensitive to that. And I think we've got to start, in my view, this is a personal view, with the fundamental principle that the data ultimately belongs to the person whose data it is. And if you start with that design principle, then a lot of things can flow through. And so transparency with the owner of that data, so to speak, of how you're going to use that data is very, very important. That is sort of where this play of regulation will come in, and how it unfolds is what we will see. Obviously, you have things like GDPR which are already out there and maturing very quickly. So that's one component. I think the other component is just the opportunity that the data presents, which is just tremendous. And the challenge is, how do you filter down from the enormity of data to what is relevant to be able to drive very sort of specific actions? And that's the opportunity. So I am very hopeful that you will be able to serve customers in a very, very differentiated manner as we move forward in all spheres.
Right. Rishad Premji, thank you so much.
Thanks very much for having me.
Thank you.